I never believed in Christmas horror stories. You know, the kind your grandmother whispers about while stirring spiced cider, her voice lowering over the crackle of the fire. She'd talk about things like the Yule Cat, or the Mari Lloyd, or that thing from Iceland that eats children who don't get new clothes. I always thought it was a way to keep kids in line, like Krampus, all bark and no bite. But then I experienced something one Christmas that changed me forever. It began on the night of December 21st, the winter solstice. I was staying at an old family cabin deep in the Vermont woods, the kind of place where the snow muffles every sound and you feel like the world has forgotten you. My plan was simple: solitude, a roaring fire, maybe some whiskey, and to finally finish the horror manuscript I'd been dragging behind me like a corpse. I thought being alone would help me focus. Instead, it pulled me into something much darker. The first thing that felt wrong was the air. Not the temperature, though it was freezing, but the stillness. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The trees didn't creak, the animals didn't stir, even the wind had vanished. I chalked it up to the snowstorm that had rolled in earlier, but something inside me twitched with unease. That night, after a few pages of stiff writing and a couple fingers of bourbon, I decided to take a break. I stepped outside onto the porch to smoke a cigarette. I don't smoke often, but something about the oppressive silence made me crave the burn in my lungs. As I lit the cigarette, I saw it. Across the snowy expanse, just at the edge of the tree line, there was a figure. Tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed to bend slightly too long, too fluid. It wore what looked like an old cloak or maybe animal hides. I blinked, thinking the drink had caught up to me, but it didn't vanish. It just stood there, motionless, watching. I whispered, "Hello," but the figure didn't move. The only thing that answered was the soft hiss of my cigarette. Then, from inside the cabin, I heard music. Old-timey Christmas music. Something warbly, like it was coming from a record player underwater. I hadn't brought anything to play music. My phone had no service and no downloaded tracks. I turned quickly, and when I looked back at the trees, the figure was gone. I ran inside, locking the door behind me. The music had stopped. The cabin was exactly as I had left it. Fire crackling, manuscript on the desk, whiskey bottle sweating on the table. I checked every room, every closet, even the crawl space. Nothing. And no, that night I barely slept. But when I did, I dreamed of strange things. Of creatures cloaked in fur and shadows. Of skeletal reindeer dragging broken sleds across black ice. Of children with hollow eyes singing in languages I didn't understand. I woke up at dawn, drenched in sweat. I should have left then. Every instinct screamed at me to pack up and go. But something kept me rooted there. Curiosity, pride, or maybe something had already started working on me. The next day I went into town to get groceries. At the checkout, I asked the clerk, a pale woman with watery blue eyes, about the figure I'd seen. Her face turned to stone. "You shouldn't ask about that," she said, "especially not so close to the solstice." I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood, but she just bagged my items in silence. When I turned to leave, she muttered something in a language I didn't recognize. Her voice was low, but it sounded like a prayer or a warning. Back at the cabin, things escalated quickly. That night, as I tried to write, the power cut out. I lit candles and tried to continue by hand, but the atmosphere had grown oppressive. Every shadow seemed to stretch too long. I kept hearing soft scratching behind the walls. Not rodents, this was rhythmic, deliberate, like fingernails. I tried to sleep, but the dreams returned. This time I saw a procession. Figures in robes made of tattered Christmas wrapping, wearing masks of porcelain children's faces. They marched through the snow in silence, carrying lanterns made from hollowed skulls. In the center, there was a throne made of pine branches and bone, and on it sat the figure I had seen that first night. It was no costume. Its face was that of a deer skull, cracked and yellowed with age, but its eyes were wet and black and human. It stared at me, and I felt a pressure in my chest, like something was trying to crawl inside. When I awoke, my manuscript pages were scattered around the cabin. Symbols had been scrawled on them in red ink, or what I hoped was ink. Circles, runes, depictions of beasts with too many limbs. I gathered them up, stuffed them in the fireplace, and lit them. The flames turned green. I didn't write again. I tried to leave. I packed up my things and started driving down the icy road. But I kept ending up back at the cabin. Every turn, every choice, the forest folded around me like a maze. By the third attempt, I saw the figure again, standing in the middle of the road, arms outstretched. I slammed on the brakes and skidded into a ditch. I was trapped. December 24th arrived, Christmas Eve. I had stopped sleeping. My food was almost gone. The air inside the cabin smelled of pine, smoke, and something else. Wet fur. I kept the fire going constantly, afraid of what would come if it went out. That night the music came back. Not from inside the cabin, but from the woods. Children's voices, singing in disharmonious tones, drifting through the trees. I recognized the melody. "Oh, come, all ye faithful." But the lyrics were wrong, twisted. Speaking of offerings, of blood, of cold old gods beneath the ice. I peered through the window and saw them. The procession from my dreams. Marching toward the cabin. Each figure carried something. An animal's skull, a doll's head, a severed deer leg. And behind them came the throne, the one made of pine and bone. But this time it was empty. They were bringing it for me. I blacked out. When I came to, it was morning, Christmas Day. I was lying outside in the snow, barefoot, in my nightclothes. The procession was gone. There were no footprints, no broken branches. But the throne was there just beyond the tree line, waiting. I didn't go back inside. I walked for hours. Eventually, I found the road. A truck picked me up, driven by an old man who didn't ask questions. He dropped me at a motel 30 miles away. I didn't look back. I've never celebrated Christmas again. I don't put up lights. I don't sing carols. I stay away from forests, from snow, from silence. I still don't know what I saw or why it chose me. But I have a theory. Some Christmas traditions are older than joy, older than giving, older than Christ. They come from a time when the dark was longer and the cold could kill, when people lit fires not to celebrate, but to keep things out, when offerings were made in secret, when children disappeared and no one questioned it. I think I was part of one of those traditions, just another soul to feed the old gods their due. So if you hear carols that sound wrong, if you see figures watching from the edge of the woods, if you dream of bone thrones and children's masks, don't wait. Don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't let them crown you. Not on Christmas. Not ever.